A sick girl texts. He hurt my mum. To a wrong number, thinking it's just a cry for help. But the response she gets isn't from a stranger. It's from the CEO of her mum's company, a woman with her own secrets and unspoken past. The message sparks a connection between two women, one desperate for help, the other holding a history she's never shared. As their lives collide, a bond begins to form, one that could heal wounds or tear them apart. But when the CEO learns that the girl's mother is someone she's secretly loved for years, the stakes grow even higher. What happens when a moment of compassion leads to a dangerous web of buried truths? Will these women survive the past coming back to haunt them? Or will it destroy everything they've worked for? Can they truly heal? Or is their fate already sealed? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now, and if this story speaks to you, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The dim light of Emily's phone screen illuminated her tear-stained face as her trembling fingers typed out the message. He hurt my mum. 3 simple words that carried the weight of years of pain and helplessness. She sat on the edge of her worn mattress, her body aching from another day of pushing through her illness to make ends meet. The small apartment felt even more suffocating tonight. The flickering ceiling light cast uneven shadows across the peeling wallpaper, and the distant sound of sirens served as a constant reminder of the neighborhood's struggles. Emily wrapped her arms around herself, trying to stop shaking. The argument with her mother just hours ago played on repeat in her mind. "Mom, please," she had begged. "You don't have to stay with him. We can figure something out." But her mother had only shaken her head, the fresh bruise on her cheek partially hidden by her hair. "You don't understand, Emily. It's complicated. He doesn't mean to. He's just going through a rough time." The same excuses over and over. Emily's chest tightened with frustration and fear. She had watched this cycle repeat itself too many times, feeling more powerless with each instance. Her own body betrayed her daily, the chronic fatigue and pain making it impossible to offer the kind of help her mother truly needed. Looking down at her phone again, Emily waited for a response from her mother's friend Sarah, someone who had helped them before. The 3 dots appeared, indicating someone was typing, and Emily's heart jumped with hope. Miles away, in a luxurious penthouse office overlooking the city skyline, Danielle paused in her review of quarterly reports when her phone buzzed. The message was from an unknown number. Reading those 4 words, "He hurt my mom," made her sit up straight, her CEO persona falling away as concern took over. Danielle's fingers hovered over her keyboard. This was clearly a wrong number, but something about the raw desperation in that simple message touched a chord deep within her. She thought about simply responding with "wrong number" and returning to her work, but her conscience wouldn't allow it. "I think you may have the wrong number," she typed carefully. "But if you're in danger, I want to help. Are you safe right now?" Emily's heart sank when she read the response. "Wrong number." Of course, another dead end. She was about to delete the conversation when the second part of the message registered. The stranger's offer of help seemed genuine, lacking the usual hollow sympathy she'd encountered so many times before. "I'm sorry," Emily typed back, her fingers shaking slightly. "I meant to text someone else, but no, we're not really safe. He always comes back." In her office, Danielle felt her throat tighten. The response carried such resignation, such familiar pain. She had seen that same defeated acceptance in others before, had felt versions of it herself. Without hesitation, she began typing again. "You don't have to apologize. Can you tell me more about what's happening? I know I'm a stranger, but sometimes that makes it easier to talk." Emily stared at the message for a long moment. The rational part of her mind screamed that this was crazy. sharing personal information with a complete stranger. But she was so tired of carrying this burden alone, of watching her mother suffer while her own health deteriorated under the stress. "My mum's boyfriend," she typed slowly. "He hits her. Has been doing it for years. I try to protect her, but I'm sick, and I can barely take care of myself some days. I don't know what to do anymore." Danielle read the message multiple times, her heart heavy. The corporate world around her seemed to fade away. The expensive desk, the view of the city, the pending meetings. None of it mattered in the face of this raw human suffering. "I'm so sorry you're going through this," she responded. "Both you and your mother deserve to be safe. There are people and organizations that can help. Would you be willing to tell me what city you're in?" The question made Emily pause. Sharing their location felt like a huge step, but something about this stranger's responses felt different. They weren't dismissive or full of empty platitudes. There was a steadiness there, a quiet strength that seemed to reach through the digital divide. "We're in Manchester," Emily finally replied. "But we've tried getting help before. The police came once, but Mom wouldn't press charges. The women's shelter was full. And I can't work enough to support us both because of my health." Danielle's mind was already racing with possibilities. As CEO of a major corporation, she had connections throughout the city, including with several non-profit organizations that helped domestic violence survivors. She knew she should probably just send some helpline numbers and step back. But something about this situation, about the vulnerability and strength in this young woman's messages, made that impossible. "I live in Manchester too," Danielle wrote. "I have connections with organizations that can help, ones that have immediate resources available. You don't have to handle this alone anymore. Would you be willing to meet somewhere public and safe to talk about options?" The offer hung in the digital space between them. Emily's fingers trembled over her phone screen as she considered the proposal. Meeting a stranger from a wrong number text. It sounded like the beginning of every cautionary tale she'd ever heard. But what other options did she have? The bruises on her mother's face weren't going to heal themselves, and the next time might be worse. "How do I know I can trust you?" Emily typed, her practical nature asserting itself even in desperation. Danielle appreciated the caution. "You're right to be careful," she responded. "I suggest we meet at the Manchester Central Library tomorrow at 11 in the morning. It's public, safe, and there are always people around. I'll be the woman in a navy blue blazer sitting at the main reading room's center table. You can observe me from a distance first, and if anything feels wrong, you can leave immediately. No pressure." Emily read and reread the message. The suggestion was thoughtful, considering her safety and comfort. The library was indeed a safe space. She'd spent many hours there herself when their apartment felt too dangerous to return to. "Okay," she finally replied. "Tomorrow at 11. But I might not show up." "I understand completely," Danielle wrote back. "If you do come, look for Danielle in the navy blazer. If you don't feel comfortable, that's absolutely fine, but I'll be there either way." Emily set her phone down, her mind whirling with the strange turn her evening had taken. A wrong number had somehow led to this moment, to a potential lifeline she hadn't expected. The cynical part of her said it was too good to be true, but a smaller, more hopeful voice whispered that sometimes help comes from the most unexpected places. She lay back on her bed, listening to the familiar sounds of the city night. Her body ached with its usual pain, but her mind was focused on tomorrow's possibility. Even if nothing came of it, even if this Danielle turned out to be another dead end, at least she was trying. At least she wasn't giving up. In her office, Danielle finally set her phone down, the quarterly reports forgotten. She moved to her window, looking out at the city lights below, knowing that somewhere out there, a young woman and her mother were trapped in a cycle of violence. Tomorrow she would try to help them break free. It wasn't the kind of executive decision she usually made, but somehow it felt like the most important choice she'd made in a long time. The city lights of Manchester twinkled through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Danielle's corner office as she pored over quarterly financial reports. The clock on her desk showed 8:45 in the evening, and most of her employees had long since gone home. But being CEO meant the work never really ended, especially with the board meeting looming tomorrow morning. Her phone buzzed, the screen illuminating with an unfamiliar number. Danielle usually ignored messages from unknown senders. They were typically spam or wrong numbers. But as she reached to silence it, 3 simple words caught her eye. "He hurt my mum." Danielle's hand froze above the phone. Something about those 4 words, stark and vulnerable in the blue light of her screen, made her pause. She picked up the device, studying the message more carefully. It could be a mistake, she thought. It probably was. But if it wasn't? After a moment's hesitation, she typed back, "I'm sorry you're going through this. Do you need help?" Several minutes passed with no response. Danielle tried to return her attention to the financial reports, but her eyes kept drifting to her phone. Just as she was convincing herself it had been a wrong number after all, 3 dots appeared on her screen. "I'm sorry," came the reply. "I thought this was someone else's number. Please forget I messaged you." Danielle could sense the embarrassment and fear behind those words. She thought carefully before responding. "You don't need to apologize. Even if I'm not who you meant to reach, I'm still willing to listen if you want to talk." Another long pause followed. Danielle could imagine the person on the other end, probably young, scared, debating whether to trust a stranger. Finally, another message appeared. "I shouldn't have texted. It's complicated." "Life usually is," Danielle responded. "But sometimes it's easier to talk to a stranger than someone close to the situation. No pressure, but I'm here if you need someone to listen." The response came faster this time. "Why would you want to help? You don't even know me." Danielle smiled slightly at the skepticism in the message. It was a fair question. She thought about her own journey, about the times she'd needed help, and found none. "Because someone once told me that we're all connected," she wrote. "And sometimes the universe puts people in our path for a reason, even if it's through a wrong number." "That sounds kind of cheesy," came the reply, but it was followed quickly by another message. "I'm Emily." "Nice to meet you, Emily. I'm Danielle." She paused before adding, "Would you like to tell me what's happening with your mum?" The typing dots appeared and disappeared several times before Emily's next message arrived. "My mum's boyfriend. He gets angry sometimes. Tonight was bad. I couldn't stop it. I never can." Danielle's heart tightened as she read the words. She knew all too well how domestic violence could tear families apart. "That must be terrifying," she wrote. "Are you and your mum safe right now?" He left for the night. He always does after. But he'll be back tomorrow, acting like nothing happened. He always comes back. Pushing aside her financial reports. "Entirely." Danielle leaned back in her chair. "Emily, can I ask how old you are?" 28, came the response. "I know I should be able to handle this better, to do more." "This isn't your responsibility to handle," Danielle typed firmly. "And you're not alone in this. There are people and organizations that can help both you and your mother." "We've tried that route before," Emily replied. "It didn't work. Mom won't leave him, and I can't leave her." Danielle could feel the weight of helplessness in those words. "Sometimes it takes multiple attempts before someone is ready to leave," she wrote. "But that doesn't mean you stop trying. Would you be willing to tell me what city you're in? I might know of some resources." The pause that followed was the longest yet. Danielle waited patiently, understanding the trust she was asking for. Finally, Emily responded, "Manchester. But like I said, we've tried everything here. Danielle sat up straighter. Manchester, her city, where she had connections, resources, people who owed her favors. I'm actually in Manchester too, she wrote, and I might know some options you haven't tried yet. How do you know about these things? Emily asked. Danielle considered how much to reveal. I work with several organizations that help people in situations like yours, she replied, keeping it vague. I've seen many women successfully leave abusive situations, even when they thought it was impossible. I don't know, Emily wrote. It feels weird talking about this with a stranger from a wrong number. I completely understand, Danielle responded. But sometimes the best help comes from unexpected places. Would you be willing to meet in person? Somewhere public and safe, of course. I might be able to help more than you think. The minutes ticked by without a response. Danielle could almost feel Emily's internal struggle through the silence. Finally, a message appeared. How do I know you're really trying to help? You could be anyone. That's a very smart question, Danielle wrote. Why don't we meet at the Manchester Central Library tomorrow at 11 in the morning? It's public, well-staffed, and there are always plenty of people around. I'll be wearing a navy blue blazer and sitting at the center table in the main reading room. You can observe from a distance first, and if anything feels off, you can leave immediately. No questions asked. She waited anxiously for Emily's response, hoping she hadn't pushed too hard. The reply, when it came, was cautious but hopeful. Maybe, I'll think about it. That's fair, Danielle wrote. If you decide to come, just look for Danielle in the navy blazer. If you don't feel comfortable approaching, that's absolutely fine. But I'll be there either way. Okay, Emily responded. Thank you. For listening, I mean. Anytime, Emily. Try to stay safe tonight. As the conversation ended, Danielle sat back in her chair, the financial reports completely forgotten. The city stretched, out below her window, millions of lives intertwining in the darkness. Somewhere out there was a young woman and her mother, trapped in a cycle of violence, reaching out for help through a misdialed number. She turned to her computer and began searching through her contacts, looking for people who might be able to help if Emily showed up tomorrow. As CEO, Danielle had built a network of connections throughout the city, but she'd rarely used them for something so personal. Tomorrow might change that. Her phone buzzed one final time. It was Emily. Good night, Danielle. Thanks for making me feel less alone. Danielle smiled softly as she typed her response. Good night, Emily. Remember, tomorrow is a new day. The days that followed their first conversation brought a steady stream of messages between Emily and Danielle. Though Emily hadn't felt comfortable meeting at the library, their digital connection grew stronger with each passing exchange. Their conversations usually began with simple check-ins, but quickly deepened into something more meaningful. On Wednesday morning, Danielle sat at her desk, sipping her coffee when a new message arrived from Emily. Mom's got another bruise she's trying to hide. I don't know how much more of this I can take. Danielle's heart clenched. Her fingers hovered over the phone screen as she carefully considered her response. How are you holding up? She wrote back. Not great. Had another bad health day. Could barely get out of bed this morning. Bills are piling up and I feel so useless. The raw honesty in Emily's words made Danielle's chest ache. She thought about the young woman on the other end of these messages. Someone fighting battles on multiple fronts, trying to stay strong while her own body worked against her. You're not useless, Emily, Danielle typed firmly. You're dealing with circumstances that would break most people. The fact that you're still fighting shows incredible strength. There was a long pause before Emily's response came through. Sometimes I wonder if I'm really strong or just too stubborn to give up. Today feels like one of those days where everything's too heavy. Danielle pushed aside the stack of contracts on her desk, giving her full attention to the conversation. Would it help to talk about something else for a while? Tell me about something that makes you happy. Honestly, these talks with you have been helping. It's nice having someone who listens without judging. Someone who doesn't look at me with pity. The admission touched Danielle deeply. She found herself sharing more than she'd intended. I understand loneliness better than you might think. Being CEO sounds glamorous, but most days I sit in this big office feeling disconnected from everyone around me. That sounds really lonely. Emily replied. Don't you have family or close friends? Danielle's thoughts drifted to Cynthia, Emily's mother, though Emily had no idea about their past connection. The memory of Cynthia's warm smile, the way she used to light up a room, sent a familiar ache through Danielle's chest. I had someone special once, Danielle wrote carefully. But timing and circumstances got in the way. Sometimes life doesn't work out the way you plan. What happened? Danielle stared at the question, memories flooding back. She thought about the countless times she'd wanted to tell Cynthia how she felt, all the moments that slipped away until it was too late. Fear happened, she finally responded. I was afraid of ruining what we had, afraid of rejection. By the time I found my courage, they were with someone else. That's really sad. Emily wrote, Do you ever think about trying again? The irony of the situation wasn't lost on Danielle. Here she was, talking to the daughter of the woman she'd loved in silence for years. It's complicated, she replied, but enough about my old regrets. Tell me more about what you're dealing with. How's your health been this week? Emily's response came slowly. The fatigue is getting worse. Some days it feels like I'm moving through thick mud. The medical bills keep coming, and I can barely afford my medications. Mom tries to help, but he controls all their money. Have you considered applying for assistance programs? Danielle asked, though she already knew the answer would be yes. Tried that. Got denied. Too sick to work full-time, but not sick enough for disability, according to them. It's like being caught in this terrible in-between space. Danielle felt the familiar urge to help, to use her resources and connections to make things better. But she knew she had to be careful. Emily, I know you're not ready to meet in person, but I want you to know that when you are, I have connections that might be able to help, both with your situation and your mother's. Why do you care so much? Emily asked. Not that I'm not grateful, but most people would have ignored that first wrong number text. Danielle's fingers paused over the keyboard. How could she explain the complex web of emotions that made her want to help? The guilt over not being there for Cynthia years ago, the desire to make things right, the genuine concern she'd developed for Emily herself. Because everyone deserves to have someone in their corner, she wrote finally. And because helping others is what gives life meaning. My success doesn't mean much if I can't use it to make a difference. You're different from what I expected a CEO to be like, Emily replied. Less corporate. Danielle smiled at that. Trust me, I can be plenty corporate when needed, but this isn't about business. This is about being human. Their conversation continued throughout the day, weaving between serious topics and lighter moments. Emily shared stories about her childhood dreams of becoming an artist, while Danielle talked about her own journey from a working-class family to the corporate world. As evening approached, Emily sent a message that made Danielle's heart skip. Mum mentioned an old friend named Danielle today, said she misses her sometimes. Weird coincidence with your name. Danielle's hands trembled slightly as she typed her response. It's a common name. The lie felt heavy, but she wasn't ready to reveal the truth. Not yet. Not when Emily was just beginning to trust her. Yeah, I guess it is. Emily wrote back. Hey, I should get some rest. Today's been rough, but talking to you made it better. Thank you for that. Anytime, Emily. Try to get some good sleep. After their conversation ended, Danielle sat in her dimly lit office, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there was the woman she'd loved from afar for years, trapped in an abusive relationship. And here was her daughter, reaching out through a chance wrong number, creating an unexpected connection that felt like both a gift and a complicated responsibility. The weight of her unspoken feelings for Cynthia pressed heavily on her chest. Every conversation with Emily felt like walking a tightrope, wanting to help, needing to be honest, but knowing that revealing too much too soon could shatter the trust they'd built. Her phone buzzed one final time that night. It was Emily. "Sometimes I think you might be my guardian angel or something. Is that weird to say?" Danielle felt tears prick at her eyes as she typed her response. "Not weird at all. Sometimes the universe has a way of connecting the right people at the right time." She just hoped that when the truth eventually came out, Emily would understand why she'd kept her connection to Cynthia hidden. For now, though, she would continue being what Emily needed: a friend, a confidant, and a source of hope in the darkness. The message came at 3:15 in the morning. Danielle's phone buzzed on her nightstand, pulling her from a restless sleep. She reached for it, squinting at the bright screen in the darkness. "Are you awake?" Emily's text read, "I'm sorry, I know it's late." Danielle sat up, immediately alert. In the weeks they'd been texting, Emily had never reached out this late. "I'm here," she typed back. "What's wrong?" There was a long pause before Emily's response appeared. "He hit her again tonight. I heard them fighting through the walls. I called the police, but Mum told them everything was fine when they showed up. She smiled and acted like nothing happened. I don't understand. Why won't she leave?" Danielle's heart clenched. She could picture Cynthia's fake smile, the same one she'd seen years ago when questions about bruises were brushed off as clumsy accidents. "It's complicated," she wrote carefully. "Leaving an abusive relationship isn't as simple as just walking away. But she deserves better." Emily's response came quickly. "I'm so scared, Danielle. I'm scared one day he'll go too far and I'll lose her. I can barely take care of myself. How am I supposed to protect her?" Danielle got out of bed, pacing her bedroom as she typed. "You shouldn't have to carry this burden alone. What your mother needs is professional help, and so do you. We can't afford help. He controls all the money. Mum doesn't even have her own bank account anymore." Taking a deep breath, Danielle made a decision. "Emily, I think it's time we met in person. I have resources and connections that could help both you and your mother, but we need to discuss this face to face." Several minutes passed without a response. Danielle could almost feel Emily's hesitation through the silence. Finally, "I don't know. Meeting strangers from the internet isn't exactly safe." "You're right to be cautious," Danielle replied. "How about we meet somewhere public? There's a coffee shop called The Daily Grind on 5th Street. It's usually busy, lots of people around. We could meet there tomorrow at 2 o'clock in the afternoon." Another long pause. "How will I know it's you?" "I'll be wearing a navy blue blazer and sitting at a table near the window. I'll have my company ID badge with me so you can verify who I am. You can look me up beforehand. Danielle Martinez, CEO of Horizon Technologies." "You're really willing to help us? Just like that?" Danielle's fingers hovered over the keyboard. How could she explain that this wasn't just like that? That helping Emily and Cynthia felt like a chance to right past wrongs, to heal old wounds. "Sometimes people come into our lives for a reason," she wrote instead. "I believe meeting you wasn't an accident." "Okay," Emily responded after what felt like forever. "Tomorrow at 2 o'clock, but I'm not promising anything." "That's fair, just talking. No pressure." After Emily signed off, Danielle stood at her bedroom window, looking out at the sleeping city. Her chest felt tight with emotion. Worry for Emily and Cynthia, anger at Derek's abuse, and beneath it all, that persistent ache whenever she thought about Cynthia. She hadn't seen her former friend in years, but the feelings had never truly faded. The next day, Danielle arrived at the daily grind 30 minutes early. She chose a table with a clear view of both entrances and ordered a coffee she barely touched. Her leg bounced nervously under the table as she waited. At exactly 2 o'clock, a young woman entered the coffee shop. She was thin, almost fragile-looking, with dark circles under her eyes that spoke of too many sleepless nights. She scanned the room until her gaze landed on Danielle's navy blazer. Danielle stood up slowly, careful not to make any sudden movements. "Emily?" Emily nodded, approaching the table cautiously. Up close, she looked even more exhausted than Danielle had imagined from their conversations. "Can I see your ID?" Danielle handed over her company badge without hesitation. Emily studied it carefully before sitting down across from her. "Would you like something to drink?" Danielle offered. "Or maybe something to eat?" Emily shook her head. "I'm okay. I can't believe I'm actually here." "I'm glad you came," Danielle said softly. "Do you want to tell me more about what happened last night?" Emily's hands twisted together on the table. It's always the same pattern. He drinks, he gets angry, he hurts her. Then he apologizes, buys her gifts, promises to change. And Mum, she believes him every time, or pretends to. I don't even know anymore. How long has this been going on? Years, since I was in high school. He wasn't always this bad, but it kept getting worse. Now Mum can't even go grocery shopping without checking in with him first. Danielle felt her jaw clench. "Has he ever hurt you?" "No, Mum made sure of that. She'd always get between us if he started getting angry with me. That's part of why I feel so guilty now. She protected me. But I can't protect her." "Emily, listen to me." Danielle leaned forward. "None of this is your fault. You're doing everything you can while dealing with your own health issues. But you don't have to do this alone anymore." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes. "I'm just so tired. Every day I wake up wondering if this will be the day he finally kills her. And I can't. I can't lose her. She's all I have." Without thinking, Danielle reached across the table and took Emily's hand. To her surprise, Emily didn't pull away. "I know people who can help. There are organizations that specialize in helping women leave abusive situations. They can provide legal assistance, temporary housing, counseling, everything your mother needs to get out safely." "She won't go," Emily whispered. "She's too afraid. Or too ashamed. I don't know which anymore." "Then we'll start with what we can do for you first. There are medical assistance programs that might have been overlooked. I have contacts who could review your case." Emily looked at their joined hands, then up at Danielle's face. "Why do you care so much? Really? Is it just pity?" Danielle felt her heart squeeze. She wanted to tell Emily everything about her history with Cynthia, about the feelings she'd carried all these years. But she couldn't. Not yet. "It's not pity," she said finally. "Sometimes life gives us a chance to make a difference. This is mine." Emily wiped her eyes with her free hand. "I should probably be more suspicious of all this, but I'm just so tired of fighting alone." "You're not alone anymore," Danielle promised, and she meant it with every fiber of her being. Whatever complicated feelings she had about Cynthia, her desire to help Emily had become its own separate mission. This bright, brave young woman had worked her way into Danielle's heart, awakening protective instincts she hadn't known she possessed. They spent the next hour making plans, with Danielle taking notes on her phone. Emily gradually relaxed, letting out small bits of humor between the serious discussions. By the time they parted, there was a tiny spark of hope in Emily's eyes that hadn't been there before. "Text me anytime," Danielle reminded her as they stood to leave. "Day or night. I mean it." Emily nodded, then suddenly stepped forward and hugged her. The embrace was brief but fierce. "Thank you," she whispered, then quickly turned and left the coffee shop. Danielle watched her go, feeling both lighter and heavier at the same time. She was committed now, to helping Emily, to protecting her, to being whatever she needed. The complicated truth about her feelings for Cynthia would have to wait. For now, this was enough. This connection, this purpose, this chance to make things right. The cafe sat on a quiet corner. Its windows steamed from the warmth inside, fighting against the chilly afternoon air. Danielle arrived 15 minutes early, choosing a table near the back where they could talk privately. Her fingers drummed nervously on the ceramic mug of green tea in front of her as she watched the door. At exactly 2 o'clock, a young woman walked in, looking uncertain. She was thin, too thin, with dark circles under her eyes that spoke of many sleepless nights. Her brown hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she wore an oversized sweater that seemed to swallow her small frame. Despite her fragile appearance, there was a determined set to her jaw that Danielle recognized immediately. Emily's eyes scanned the cafe until they found Danielle, who stood and gave a small wave. As Emily approached, Danielle could see the way she carried herself, like someone used to making herself smaller, trying not to be noticed. "Hi," Emily said softly, hovering near the table. "You're Danielle?" "Yes, I am." Danielle smiled warmly, trying to put the younger woman at ease. "Thank you for meeting me. Would you like to sit?" Emily hesitated, her hands fidgeting with the strap of her worn messenger bag. "How do I know you're really who you say you are?" Instead of being offended, Danielle felt a surge of respect for Emily's caution. She reached into her blazer pocket and pulled out her company ID badge. "Here, I want you to feel safe. Take a look." Emily studied the badge carefully, her fingers tracing over Danielle's photo and credentials. After a moment, she nodded and slipped into the chair across from Danielle. "Can I get you something to drink?" Danielle offered. "Or maybe something to eat." "Just water is fine," Emily said, but Danielle noticed the way her eyes lingered on the display case of pastries. "I'd really like to get you something more substantial." Danielle pressed gently. "I always find difficult conversations easier with a little comfort food." A faint blush colored Emily's cheeks. Okay, maybe a sandwich, if you're sure it's not too much trouble." Danielle waved down a server and ordered a turkey club sandwich with soup for Emily, along with a hot chocolate. As they waited for the food, she observed how Emily kept glancing towards the door, as if expecting someone to burst in at any moment. "No one followed you here?" Danielle asked quietly. Emily shook her head. "No, he's at work. Right now. Mom's at home. She thinks I'm at a doctor's appointment." The food arrived, and Danielle waited while Emily took a few bites, noticing how she tried to eat slowly despite her obvious hunger. "Tell me about what happened last night," Danielle prompted softly. Emily set down her sandwich, her hands trembling slightly. "It was stupid. So stupid. Mom bought the wrong brand of beer. That's all it took. He started screaming about how she never listens, how she can't do anything right. Then Her voice cracked. "He grabbed her by the hair and slammed her against the wall. I tried to stop him, but I'm not strong enough anymore. Not since getting sick." Danielle's heart ached as she watched tears well up in Emily's eyes. Without thinking, she reached across the table and covered Emily's cold hand with her warm one. "It's not your fault," she said firmly. "None of this is your fault." "But it is," Emily whispered. "I should be able to protect her. She's my mum. She protected me when I was little, and now when she needs me most, I can't do anything except watch it happen over and over. Emily, listen to me. Danielle leaned forward, her voice gentle but intense. You're dealing with your own health challenges. You're doing everything you possibly can, but this isn't something you should have to handle alone. I don't know what else to do, Emily admitted, wiping her eyes with her free hand. Mom won't leave him. I've begged her so many times. She always says she loves him, that he'll change, that it's not that bad. But I see the bruises she tries to hide. I hear her crying at night when she thinks I'm asleep. Danielle felt her chest tighten with a mixture of anger and sorrow. Has she ever tried to leave before? Once, about 2 years ago, we stayed at a shelter for 3 days, but he found out where she worked, started showing up there, threatening to hurt himself if she didn't come back. She went back, and things were even worse after that. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on Danielle's shoulders. She knew getting involved could complicate her life in countless ways, possibly even affect her career if things went wrong. But looking at Emily's exhausted face, she couldn't walk away. I have resources, Danielle said carefully. Connections to people who help women in situations like this. We could get your mother somewhere safe, somewhere he couldn't find her. There are legal options, too. Restraining orders, emergency protective orders. Emily stirred her soup listlessly. She won't go. She's too scared, or too broken, or both. And even if she did, I can barely take care of myself right now. My medical bills are overwhelming, and I can't work full-time anymore. How could I help her start over? Let me worry about that part, Danielle said softly. There are programs, resources we haven't explored yet. You don't have to figure everything out alone anymore. Looking up, Emily's eyes searched Danielle's face. Why do you care so much? I know I sound ungrateful, but people don't just help strangers like this, not without wanting something in return. The question hit close to home, making Danielle's heart race. She couldn't tell Emily the whole truth about her history with Cynthia, about the feelings she'd buried for so long. Instead, she squeezed Emily's hand gently. Because sometimes we get a chance to make a difference in someone's life, and when that chance comes, we have to take it. Emily studied their joined hands for a long moment. I want to trust you, she said finally. I'm just so scared of making things worse. I understand, Danielle replied. We'll take it one step at a time. No pressure, no rushed decisions. But I want you to know I'm here. Whatever you need, whenever you need it. They spent the next hour talking through possibilities, with Danielle taking careful notes on her phone. She watched as Emily gradually relaxed, even managing a small smile once or twice. When they finally stood to leave, Emily looked both lighter and more uncertain. Thank you, Emily said softly, for listening, for caring. It's been a long time since anyone did either. Before Danielle could respond, Emily stepped forward and hugged her quickly. The embrace lasted only seconds, but Danielle felt the trembling in Emily's thin frame, the desperate need for comfort and support. As she watched Emily walk away, Danielle felt the full weight of what she was taking on. Her involvement could complicate everything, her career, her reputation, her carefully ordered life. But something deeper than logic or self-preservation was driving her now. She couldn't walk away, not when Emily and Cynthia needed help so desperately. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the cafe floor as Danielle gathered her things. She knew she was crossing a line between professional distance and personal involvement. But sometimes, she reflected, the right thing to do wasn't always the safe thing. With a deep breath, she stepped out into the cooling air, already planning her next steps in what she knew would be a challenging journey. The autumn breeze rustled through the trees as Danielle parked her car a block away from Cynthia's house. Her heart pounded against her ribs as she smoothed down her business suit and checked her reflection in the rearview mirror. The familiar neighborhood brought back memories she'd tried to forget. Summer afternoons spent laughing on Cynthia's porch, sharing secrets and dreams before everything changed. Taking a deep breath, she stepped out of her car, clutching a portfolio filled with fake business proposals. The excuse she'd crafted seemed flimsy now, a door-to-door campaign to promote small business loans. But it was the best way she could think of to check on Cynthia without raising suspicion. As she walked down the cracked sidewalk, Danielle noticed how the once cheerful yellow house had fallen into disrepair. Peeling paint, untrimmed, bushes, and a broken porch step told a story of neglect that made her chest ache. This wasn't the home she remembered, where flowers once bloomed in carefully tended beds and wind chimes sang in the breeze. Her knuckles had barely touched the door when it opened, revealing Cynthia. Danielle's breath caught in her throat. Despite the years that had passed, Cynthia's gentle presence still had the power to make her pulse race. But the woman before her was a shadow of her former self, thinner, more subdued, with worry lines etched deeply around her eyes. "Danielle." Cynthia's voice wavered, her hand tightening on the doorframe. "What are you doing here?" Forcing a professional smile, Danielle held up her portfolio. "I'm representing Cedar Grove Financial. We're reaching out to local homeowners about our new small business loan program." The rehearsed words felt like ash in her mouth. Cynthia glanced nervously over her shoulder before stepping onto the porch, pulling the door almost closed behind her. I can't really talk right now. Derek will be home soon, and I need to start dinner." The mention of his name made Danielle's jaw clench. "It'll only take a few minutes." She pressed gently. "The programs we're offering could really help someone looking to start their own business." Something flickered in Cynthia's eyes, a ghost of the dreams she'd once shared about opening her own flower shop. "I suppose, just for a minute," she conceded, leading Danielle into the living room. The interior of the house told an even sadder story. The walls were bare where family photos used to hang. A broken vase lay swept into a corner, its pieces forgotten. The room felt cold despite the warm day outside. As Danielle began her practiced pitch about business loans, she carefully observed Cynthia. The long sleeves in warm weather, the way she kept glancing at the clock, the slight wince when she shifted in her chair, all confirmed Emily's worst fears. "How have you been, Cynthia?" Danielle asked softly, letting her professional facade slip for a moment. "It's been so long." Cynthia's hands twisted in her lap. "I'm fine. Everything's fine. Derek takes good care of me." The lie hung heavy between them. Danielle noticed a fading bruise just visible beneath Cynthia's collar, poorly concealed with makeup. Her heart clenched with rage and regret. "You know," Danielle said carefully, "if you ever need help, with anything, you can always reach out to me. I never stopped caring about you." Cynthia's eyes filled with tears. She quickly blinked away. "Please don't," she whispered. I can't think about the past, about what might have been different if—" The sound of a car door slamming made Cynthia jump. "You need to go," she said urgently, standing up. "Derek doesn't like unexpected visitors." As if on cue, heavy footsteps approached the front door. Danielle gathered her papers quickly, but not before a tall man with cold eyes stepped into the room. She recognized him immediately from the company photographs she'd researched. Derek Morrison, regional sales director for one of her competitor firms. "Well, well," he said, his smile not reaching his eyes. "What do we have here?" "This is Danielle Shaw," Cynthia said quickly, her voice trembling slightly. "She's from Cedar Grove Financial, talking about business loans." Derek's eyes narrowed with recognition. "Danielle Shaw, the CEO of Shaw Enterprises." His tone was deceptively pleasant. "What an unexpected honor. Though I must say door-to-door sales seems beneath someone of your position." Danielle met his gaze steadily, fighting back the urge to confront him then and there. "We believe in a personal touch," she replied smoothly. "But I can see this isn't a good time. Thank you for hearing me out, Mrs. Thompson." As she turned to leave, Derek's hand shot out to grab her business card. "Let me walk you out," he insisted, his grip on her elbow just shy of painful. On the porch, out of Cynthia's earshot, his facade dropped. "I know who you are," he said quietly. "And I know about your connection to Cynthia. Stay away from my house and my girlfriend, or you might find your company facing some unfortunate complications." The threat was clear, but it only strengthened Danielle's resolve. "Interesting," she replied coolly. "I was just thinking the same about your position at Sterling Corp. It would be a shame if certain information came to light." She could see the calculated menace in his eyes, the wheels turning as he assessed her as a threat. Walking to her car, Danielle's mind raced. Derek's connection to Sterling Corp explained a lot. The company had been trying to orchestrate a hostile takeover of her firm for months. The personal and professional were becoming dangerously intertwined. Back in her car, Danielle's hands shook as she gripped the steering wheel. The sight of Cynthia's defeated posture, the evidence of abuse, and Derek's barely veiled threats filled her with equal parts rage and determination. She had failed to protect Cynthia once before, too afraid to acknowledge her feelings, too concerned with maintaining professional boundaries. She wouldn't make the same mistake again. Opening her laptop, she began to dig deeper into Derek's background. His position at Sterling Corp was just the beginning. She uncovered a pattern of harassment complaints that had been quietly settled, suspicious financial transactions, and connections to board members who had been pressuring her company lately. As the sun set, casting long shadows across her dashboard, Danielle realized the situation was even more complicated than she'd imagined. Helping Emily and Cynthia escape Derek's abuse wouldn't just be a personal risk, it could have far-reaching professional consequences. But looking at the photo of Cynthia still saved in her phone from happier days, Danielle knew she had no choice. Some things were worth risking everything for. The evening, sky darkened as Danielle sat in her home office, reviewing financial reports. Her phone buzzed against the polished mahogany desk. Emily's name flashed across the screen, making her heart skip. Ever since meeting Cynthia earlier that day, she'd been on edge. The message made her blood run cold. "Please help. Mom's hurt bad. He went crazy." Danielle's fingers flew across the keyboard. "Where are you? Is he still there?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. "At home. He left. Mom won't stop crying. There's so much blood." Without hesitation, Danielle grabbed her car keys. "I'm coming. Lock the doors. Call 911 if he comes back." The 15-minute drive felt like hours. Her hands gripped the steering wheel so tight her knuckles turned white. Memories of Cynthia's earlier defeated posture mixed with terrifying images of what she might find. When she pulled up to the small house, all the lights were on. Emily stood on the porch, pale and shaking. Her thin frame seemed even more fragile in the harsh porch light. "He just snapped," Emily said as Danielle rushed up the steps. "Mom tried to defend herself this time and he—" Her voice broke. Inside, they found Cynthia curled up on the bathroom floor. Her lip was split, blood staining the front of her light blue blouse. An angry red mark bloomed across her cheekbone. "Oh, Cynthia," Danielle whispered, kneeling beside her. "We need to get you to a hospital." No hospitals. Cynthia pleaded, her voice hoarse. Derek knows people there. They'll tell him where I am. Emily hovered in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. Mom, please, this is bad. You need help. Danielle's mind raced. She had connections at a private clinic across town, doctors who wouldn't ask questions. There's somewhere else we can go, someone I trust. As she helped Cynthia to her feet, the front door slammed open. Derek's voice boomed through the house. Cynthia, where are you, you ungrateful witch? Emily flinched, pressing herself against the wall. Danielle's protective instincts surged. She stepped into the hallway, placing herself between Derek and the bathroom. He stopped short when he saw her, his face contorting with rage. You again! I warned you to stay away. And I warned you about consequences. Danielle replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. The police are on their way. Leave now. Derek's laugh was ugly. The police. In this town, half the force plays golf with me every weekend. He took a menacing step forward. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Neither do you. Danielle shot back. She pulled out her phone, holding it up. I'm live streaming right now to my company's security team. Everything you do is being recorded. One wrong move, and not only will you face assault charges, but the SEC will receive an interesting file about your dealings at Sterling Corp. Derek's eyes narrowed, calculating. Danielle could almost see him weighing his options, wondering if she was bluffing. She wasn't, at least not about the evidence. She'd spent the afternoon building a case against him. This isn't over. He snarled finally, backing toward the door. Cynthia knows she belongs to me. She'll come crawling back. She always does. Not this time. Cynthia's voice came from behind Danielle, stronger than before. She stepped into view, one hand pressed against her swollen face. I'm done, Derek. Done being your punching bag. Done being afraid. The look of pure hatred on Derek's face made Emily whimper, but he turned and stormed out, the door banging behind him. Danielle's shoulders sagged with relief, but she knew they weren't safe yet. We need to move fast. Emily, pack some bags, just essentials. You're both coming with me. As Emily rushed to gather their things, Danielle helped Cynthia sit on the couch. Their eyes met, and the years seemed to fall away. All the unspoken feelings, the missed chances, the regret. It hung between them like a tangible thing. Why are you helping us? Cynthia asked softly. After all this time? Danielle's hand found Cynthia's, squeezing gently. Because I never stopped caring. Because I should have been brave enough to tell you how I felt years ago before he got his hooks in you. Because... She swallowed hard. Because I love you. I always have. Tears spilled down Cynthia's cheeks. I was so scared, she whispered. Scared of my feelings for you, scared of what people would say. Then Derek came along, and he seemed safe. Normal. By the time I realized what he really was, I felt trapped. Emily returned with 2 hastily packed duffel bags, her face streaked with tears. Mom, she said, her voice breaking. Why didn't you tell me? All these years I knew something was wrong, but... Cynthia opened her arms and Emily fell into them, sobbing. I'm so sorry, baby. I thought I was protecting you. I thought if I just tried harder, loved him better, he'd change. I was wrong. So wrong. Danielle's heart ached watching them. She'd failed them both by staying away, by convincing herself it wasn't her place to interfere. Never again. We need to go, she said gently. My house has security, and my lawyers will be there first thing in the morning. We'll get restraining orders, press charges, everything we should have done years ago. As they walked to her car, Danielle kept scanning the darkness, half expecting Derek to jump out. But they made it safely inside, Emily in the back seat with their bags, Cynthia in the front. As Danielle started the engine, Cynthia's hand found hers again. "Thank you," she whispered, "for being here, for not giving up on us." Danielle's throat tightened with emotion. "Never again," she promised. "Whatever comes next, we face it together." The streetlights cast alternating patterns of light and shadow across their faces as they drove away from the house of horrors. In the rearview mirror, Danielle could see Emily's exhausted face, finally relaxing as they put distance between themselves and Derek. Her heart felt full to bursting, with love for Cynthia, with protective fury, with determination to make things right. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. Derek wouldn't give up without a fight, and healing would take time. But looking at the two precious souls in her car, Danielle knew with absolute certainty that they were worth any battle, any risk. The night stretched out before them, full of uncertainty but also hope. Sometimes, Danielle realized, love meant being brave enough to step into the darkness, to fight the monsters, to offer shelter from the storm. And sometimes, love meant finally finding your way home. As Danielle sat in her dimly lit office, the glow of her computer screen cast shadows across her face. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, digging deeper into Derek's past. Each new discovery made her stomach churn with growing dread and anger. "This can't be right," she muttered, double-checking the financial records she'd uncovered. But the numbers didn't lie. Derek had been embezzling funds through a series of shell companies, all connected to her corporation's international partnerships. The paper trail was clever, hidden beneath layers of legitimate-looking transactions, but it was there if you knew where to look. Her phone buzzed, another text from Emily. "Mum's not answering her phone, I'm scared." Danielle's heart rate quickened. She quickly typed back, "I'll check on her. Stay where you are." The clock on her wall showed 11:15 at night. Most of her employees had gone home hours ago, but she couldn't stop. Not when she was so close to gathering enough evidence to bring Derek down. Her private investigator had sent over more files earlier that day. Photos of Derek meeting with known criminals, documentation of bribes, and worse, evidence of physical violence against previous girlfriends who had all mysteriously withdrawn their complaints. The sound of footsteps in the hallway made her freeze. At this hour, nobody should be here except security. She quickly saved the files to an encrypted drive and slipped it into her purse. "Working late again, Danielle." Derek's voice made her blood run cold. He stood in her doorway, his expensive suit perfectly pressed, his smile razor-sharp. "Just catching up on some paperwork," she said evenly, her hand inches from the panic button under her desk. He stepped into her office, closing the door behind him. "Funny thing about paperwork, it has a way of revealing things people would rather keep hidden." "Is that a threat, Derek?" A friendly warning. He leaned against her desk, too close for comfort. "I know you've been poking around in my business. I know you've been talking to Cynthia." Danielle met his gaze steadily, refusing to show fear. "Cynthia deserves better than living in terror of you." "Ah, yes, your feelings for her." His smile widened. "Did you think I didn't know? All those longing looks over the years, the way you've always tried to protect her. It's pathetic, really." Her fingers curled into fists under the desk. "The only pathetic thing here is a man who needs to beat women to feel powerful." Derek's face darkened. "Watch yourself, Danielle. You may be CEO, but accidents happen. Cars crash. People fall down stairs. Is that what happened to Jessica Martinez?" Danielle watched his expression change at the name. "Or Sandra Thompson? I know about all of them, Derek. Every woman you've hurt, every complaint that mysteriously disappeared." He moved with frightening speed, grabbing her arm. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." "Let go of me," Danielle said quietly, "or I'll press this panic button, and security will be here in 30 seconds. How would you explain that to the board? After a tense moment, he released her. You're making a big mistake. No, you made the mistake when you hurt Cynthia and Emily, when you used my company to launder money, when you thought you could threaten me in my own office. Her phone buzzed again. Emily, sending another worried message about her mother. Derek's eyes flicked to the screen, and his smile returned. Sweet Emily, he said, so concerned about her mother. She should be. Cynthia's not very careful these days, distracted. Accidents happen to distracted people. Danielle stood up, her voice shaking with rage. If anything happens to either of them, you'll what? He laughed. Go to the police? They're already in my pocket. The board? I have enough dirt on half of them to ensure their cooperation. Face it, Danielle, you're out of your league. But Danielle wasn't listening anymore. Her mind was racing, calculating risks and possibilities. She had evidence of his crimes. But was it enough? Could she protect Emily and Cynthia while building a stronger case? After Derek left, she immediately called Emily. I'm coming to get you. Pack a bag for you and your mother. Don't tell anyone where you're going. What's happening? Emily's voice trembled. Is Mom okay? I'm going to make sure she is. Trust me, Emily, please. As she drove through the dark streets, Danielle's mind whirled with plans and contingencies. She had resources, connections, money, but Derek had those too. Plus, he had a ruthlessness she couldn't match. Or could she? For Cynthia and Emily, how far was she willing to go? She thought of Cynthia's bruised face, of Emily's desperate texts, of all the other women Derek had hurt. The weight of responsibility pressed down on her shoulders. She was their only hope, their protector, but every step she took to help them put her own career, maybe even her life, at risk. When she arrived at Emily's apartment, the young woman was waiting with 2 packed bags, her face pale with worry. I still can't reach Mom, Emily said, climbing into the car. This is all my fault. If I hadn't sent you that text. Stop, Danielle said firmly. None of this is your fault. The only person to blame is Derek. But Emily's eyes filled with tears. I should have done more to protect her. I should have been stronger. You are strong, Danielle assured her, pulling away from the curb. You reached out for help when you needed it. That takes courage. They drove to Cynthia's house in tense silence. The lights were off, but Cynthia's car was in the driveway. Danielle's heart pounded as they approached the front door. Stay behind me, she instructed Emily, using her phone's flashlight to illuminate their way. The door was unlocked, never a good sign. Inside, they found signs of a struggle, a knocked-over lamp, a broken vase, Cynthia's phone lying cracked on the floor. Emily's strangled sob echoed through the dark house. Mom? Mom, where are you? Call 911. Danielle ordered, her own fear threatening to overwhelm her. But she couldn't break down, not now, not when they needed her to be strong. They found Cynthia in the kitchen, conscious but dazed, a nasty bruise forming on her temple. Derek's warning had been more than words. It had been a promise. As they waited for the ambulance, Danielle held Cynthia's hand, while Emily pressed a cold compress to her mother's head. The weight of their trust, their dependence on her, felt both terrifying and sacred. I won't let him hurt you again, she promised them both, whatever it takes. But as she looked at their scared faces, she wondered if she could keep that promise. Derek's network was vast, his influence deep. Taking him down would mean risking everything she'd built, maybe even her freedom if she had to bend laws to protect them. The question wasn't whether she would do it. She would, without hesitation. The question was whether she could succeed before Derek destroyed everything and everyone she loved. The safe house was modest but secure, tucked away in a quiet suburban neighborhood where curious eyes rarely wandered. Danielle had arranged it through discreet channels, making sure Derek couldn't trace it back to her. As evening settled in, she sat with Emily at the small kitchen table, their hands wrapped around steaming mugs of tea. Emily looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes betraying nights of broken sleep. Her mother rested in one of the bedrooms down the hall, finally getting some much-needed rest after their hasty departure from the hospital. "The security system is top of the line," Danielle explained, trying to ease some of Emily's visible tension. "There are cameras covering every approach to the house, and I have a team monitoring them 24 hours a day." Emily nodded, but her fingers tightened around her mug. "Thank you for everything. I know this must be putting you in a difficult position." "Don't worry about that," Danielle said softly. "Your safety, both of you, that's what matters right now." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the kind that comes from sharing intense experiences together. Outside, a car drove past, its headlights briefly illuminating the room through the drawn curtains. Emily flinched at the light, then tried to hide it with a weak smile. "I keep thinking he'll find us," she admitted. "Even here, Derek. He has a way of always being one step ahead." Danielle reached across the table and squeezed Emily's hand. "Not this time, I promise you that." Emily's eyes welled with tears. "But what if—" She paused, swallowing hard. "What if Mom goes back to him? She's done it before. Every time I think we're finally free, she finds a reason to return." The pain in Emily's voice cut through Danielle's professional facade. She'd seen this pattern before, had watched helplessly years ago as Cynthia chose Derek over and over again. "I know she loves me," Emily continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "But sometimes I think she loves him more. Or maybe she's just more afraid of him than she loves herself." Danielle felt her own eyes stinging. "Your mother, Cynthia. She's stronger than she knows. Sometimes we get lost in patterns that feel impossible to break. But that doesn't mean we can't find our way out." "You sound like you know her well," Emily observed, studying Danielle's face carefully. Danielle's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't meant to let her guard down quite so much. We were friends once, a long time ago." "Before Derek?" "Yes," Danielle admitted, memories flooding back unbidden. "Your mother was different then. Lighter. She laughed more easily. She had dreams she wasn't afraid to chase." Emily leaned forward slightly. "What happened?" Danielle looked down at her tea, now gone cold. "Derek happened. But before that, I happened. Or rather, I didn't happen. I should have told her how I felt, should have fought harder to keep her in my life. Instead, I watched from a distance as he slowly took everything that made her shine." The words hung in the air between them, more revelation than Danielle had intended to share. She could see the moment understanding dawned in Emily's eyes. "You loved her," Emily said. It wasn't a question. Danielle didn't deny it. "I still do, but that's not why I'm helping you both now. Your mother deserves to be free, to find herself again. And you deserve to have your mother back." Emily was quiet for a long moment, processing this new information. When she spoke again, her voice was gentle. "Does she know?" "No." Danielle shook her head. "And now isn't the time. She needs to focus on healing, on finding her strength again." From down the hall came the sound of movement, Cynthia stirring in her sleep. Both women turned toward the noise, their protective instincts immediately engaged. "I'll check on her," Emily said, standing up. But before she left the kitchen, she turned back to Danielle. "You know, sometimes the people we love need someone to believe in them more than they believe in themselves. Maybe that's why you're really here." As Emily's footsteps faded down the hall, Danielle sat alone with her thoughts. Her feelings for Cynthia had been buried for so long, like a seed waiting for spring. Now they were sprouting in the most dangerous of seasons, when everything was at stake. She pulled out her phone, checking the security feeds one more time. Everything was quiet, but she knew better than to let her guard down. Derek was out there, plotting his next move. She would need to be ready, to be stronger than her feelings, smarter than her heart. Through the open doorway, she could hear Emily's soft voice, soothing her mother back to sleep. The sound made her chest ache with a complex mixture of love and determination. Whatever happened next, she would protect them both, not because of her feelings for Cynthia, but because it was the right thing to do. The night stretched ahead, full of uncertainties, but for now, in this moment, they were safe. Sometimes Danielle thought that had to be enough. Danielle's phone buzzed at 3:15 in the morning. Her security team had detected unusual activity around her office building. She sat up in bed, instantly alert, and opened the surveillance footage on her tablet. What she saw made her blood run cold. 2 men in dark suits were methodically photographing the entrance logs. They weren't her employees. Their movements were too practiced, too professional. Private investigators. Her hands trembling slightly, she opened her encrypted email. The message from her head of security confirmed her worst fears. Derek had hired a top-tier investigation firm. They weren't just watching her office. They were tracking Emily's movements too. Danielle's mind raced as she threw essential items into a bag. She'd prepared for this possibility, but the reality of it struck her like a physical blow. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Emily. "Someone's watching our apartment. Black car. Been there for hours." Danielle's chest tightened. "Don't move. Don't turn on any lights. I'm coming to get you both." She grabbed her emergency kit, cash, burner phones, and documents she'd prepared weeks ago. The weight of what she was about to do settled on her shoulders. Running meant risking everything she'd built, her company, her reputation, her entire life. But staying meant risking something far more precious. The streets were empty as Danielle drove through the pre-dawn darkness. Her hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. She parked 3 blocks from Emily and Cynthia's apartment, using the back alleys she'd mapped out for exactly this scenario. The black car was still there, just as Emily had described. 2 men sat inside, poorly concealing their surveillance equipment. Danielle's jaw clenched. Derek wasn't even trying to be subtle anymore. She texted Emily, "Back door, 5 minutes. Bring only what you can carry." The wait felt endless. Danielle's heart pounded as she watched the shadows, expecting Derek or his men to materialize at any moment. Finally, she saw movement, Emily supporting Cynthia as they hurried through the darkness. Cynthia looked disoriented, still half asleep. Her eyes widened when she saw Danielle. "What's happening?" "Derek hired people to watch us," Emily explained, helping her mother into the car. "We have to go." Danielle caught Cynthia's gaze in the rearview mirror. The fear there made her heart ache. "I have a safe place," she assured them both. "Somewhere he won't think to look." As they drove through the quiet streets, Danielle explained what she'd discovered. She kept her voice steady, professional, trying to ignore how her hands shook slightly on the wheel. "The investigators have been following all of us for at least a week," she said. "They've been gathering information, building a file. Derek's planning something big." Emily leaned forward from the back seat. "What kind of something?" "The kind that could hurt all of us?" Danielle replied grimly. "He's trying to find leverage, and he's not above using your safety to get it." Cynthia made a small, broken sound. "This is all my fault. If I hadn't—" "No." Danielle cut her off firmly. "This is Derek's fault. Only his." They drove for hours, taking back roads and switching cars twice at pre-arranged locations. Danielle had planned this route carefully, knowing they might need it someday. What she hadn't planned for was how it would feel to have Cynthia so close, to hear her quiet breathing in the darkness. The safe house was a small cabin on the outskirts of town, surrounded by dense woods. Danielle had bought it through a shell company years ago, making sure it couldn't be traced back to her. As she ushered Emily and Cynthia inside, she tried not to think about how many nights she'd spent here alone, wondering if this day would ever come. "It's not much," she apologized, turning on the lights. "But it's secure. No one knows about this place except my most trusted security team." Emily explored the space with curious eyes. "You've been planning this for a while, haven't you?" Danielle nodded, unable to meet Cynthia's questioning gaze. "I needed to be prepared, just in case." The cabin had 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, and a living room with a fireplace. It was simple but comfortable, stocked with everything they might need. Danielle showed them where to find the emergency supplies, the backup generator, the hidden panic room. As dawn began to break, exhaustion finally caught up with them. Emily helped Cynthia settle into one of the bedrooms, while Danielle checked and double-checked the security systems. "Try to get some rest," she told them. "We're safe here." But as she stood guard by the window, watching the sun rise over the trees, Danielle felt anything but safe. Her phone was filled with urgent messages from her office. Board members demanding explanations, meetings she was missing, decisions that needed her attention. Her carefully built world was already starting to unravel. And then there was Cynthia, sleeping just down the hall. Cynthia, who still didn't know the real reason Danielle had been so prepared for this moment. The weight of unspoken words pressed against Danielle's chest, making it hard to breathe. Emily appeared beside her, offering a cup of coffee. "You should rest too." Danielle shook her head. "I need to stay alert. You need to take care of yourself," Emily insisted. "We're going to need you strong for whatever comes next." The gentle concern in Emily's voice nearly broke Danielle's composure. She accepted the coffee with trembling hands, trying to hold back the tide of emotions threatening to overwhelm her. "I never wanted this for either of you," she whispered. "I should have stopped him years ago before he had so much power over all of us." Emily touched her arm gently. "You're stopping him now. That's what matters." But the guilt wouldn't leave Danielle alone. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Cynthia's face from years ago, before Derek, before all the pain. If she had spoken up then, if she had been brave enough to tell Cynthia how she felt, could she have prevented all of this? The morning light grew stronger, casting long shadows through the trees. Somewhere out there, Derek was looking for them, gathering his forces, planning his next move. Danielle knew the storm was coming. She just hoped she was strong enough to protect the 2 people who had become more important to her than anything else in her life, even if it meant losing everything else she had built. She looked down at her phone one last time before turning it off. Her company would suffer without her. Her reputation might never recover. But as she watched Emily tend to her mother with such gentle care, Danielle knew she had made the right choice. Some things were worth any sacrifice. The morning light filtered through the cabin's windows, casting warm patches on the worn wooden floor. Danielle sat at the small kitchen table, her 3rd cup of coffee growing cold between her hands. She hadn't slept more than a few hours since bringing Emily and Cynthia to the safe house 2 days ago. In the living room, Emily was curled up on the couch, wrapped in a thick blanket, finally getting some much-needed rest. The constant stress of the past few years showed on her young face, even in sleep. Danielle felt a surge of protectiveness watching her, this brave young woman who had reached out to a stranger in desperation. "She looks so peaceful when she sleeps." Cynthia's soft voice came from behind her. "I can't remember the last time I saw her like this." Danielle turned to find Cynthia standing in the doorway. arms wrapped around herself, as if trying to hold something in. The morning light caught the silver strands in her dark hair, reminding Danielle of all the years that had passed between them. "Come sit with me," Danielle said quietly, pulling out a chair. "There's fresh coffee." Cynthia hesitated for a moment before joining her at the table. Her hands shook slightly as she poured herself a cup. The silence between them felt heavy with unspoken words. "I keep thinking about that summer," Cynthia finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Before Derek, before everything went wrong." Danielle's heart clenched. She knew exactly which summer Cynthia meant, the one where their friendship had teetered on the edge of something more, when every shared glance had felt electric with possibility. "We used to spend hours talking about nothing and everything," Danielle remembered, trying to keep her voice steady. "Planning our futures. I was so scared," Cynthia admitted, tears gathering in her eyes. "Of what I felt for you. Of what people would say. I thought if I just ignored it, if I found a nice, normal relationship. And then Derek came along," Danielle finished softly. Cynthia nodded, wiping at her tears. "He seemed so charming at first, so stable. Everything I thought I was supposed to want. By the time I realized who he really was, I felt trapped, and I was too ashamed to reach out to you. I should have fought harder," Danielle said, the words she'd held back for years finally spilling out. "I knew something was wrong. I saw the changes in you, but I let you push me away. I was hurt and proud and afraid. Afraid that if I told you how I really felt, I'd lose you completely." Emily stirred on the couch, making a small sound in her sleep. Both women watched her for a moment, their hearts heavy with the weight of choices made and paths not taken. "She's so much stronger than I ever was," Cynthia said. "She never stopped trying to save me, even when I couldn't save myself." Danielle reached across the table, taking Cynthia's hand. "You're stronger than you know. You're here now. You're fighting back." Cynthia's fingers tightened around Danielle's. "Only because of you. Because you didn't give up on us, even after all these years." The touch sent sparks of warmth through Danielle's arm, awakening feelings she'd tried so hard to bury. But before she could respond, Emily woke up, stretching and blinking in the morning light. "Hey," she said sleepily, padding into the kitchen. She paused, noticing their joined hands, but didn't comment. Instead, she grabbed a cup of coffee and joined them at the table. Over the next few hours, as the sun climbed higher in the sky, the three women talked more openly than they ever had before. Emily shared stories of her childhood, of the good moments between the bad, making her mother laugh through her tears. Danielle spoke about her lonely climb to success, about the emptiness of achievement without anyone to share it with. As the day wore on, Emily began to look at Danielle differently, not just as the powerful CEO who had rescued them, but as someone who understood loss and longing, someone who had fought her own battles with loneliness and fear. "You make me feel safe," Emily admitted during a quiet moment. "Not just because of this place or your resources. It's like you see us. Really see us. And you're not afraid of our broken pieces." Danielle felt her throat tighten with emotion. "You two have become more important to me than anything else in my life. I want you to know that." But even as she said the words, Danielle's phone buzzed with another alert from her security team. Derek had been spotted near one of her company's buildings, making threats. He was getting closer, more desperate. Looking at Emily and Cynthia, seeing the peace they'd finally found in this temporary sanctuary, Danielle knew what she had to do. She couldn't let them live in fear any longer. She wouldn't let Derek destroy the fragile healing that had begun. That night, after Emily and Cynthia had gone to bed, Danielle sat at the kitchen table planning her next move. She would have to leave them here, protected by her security team, while she went back to confront Derek. The thought of leaving them made her physically ill, but she knew it was the only way to end this. She wrote 2 letters, one for Emily and one for Cynthia, explaining her decision. As she sealed the envelopes, she heard soft footsteps behind her. "You're planning something," Emily said, her voice tight with worry. "Something dangerous." Danielle turned to face her. "I have to end this. You and your mother deserve a chance at peace." "But why does it have to be you?" Emily's voice cracked. "Why do you have to risk everything?" Danielle stood, pulling Emily into a tight hug. "Because that's what family does. And like it or not, you two have become my family." Emily clung to her, crying softly. "Promise you'll come back." Danielle held her tighter, wishing she could make that promise with certainty. But she knew better than to make promises she might not be able to keep. Instead, she smoothed Emily's hair back and whispered, "I'll do everything in my power to come back to you both." The decision was made. In the morning, she would leave before they woke up. Her letters would explain everything, her plan to confront Derek, the evidence she had gathered against him, and most importantly, the depth of her feelings for both of them. As she watched Emily finally go back to bed, Danielle felt the weight of her decision settle over her. She had spent her whole life building walls to protect herself, but these 2 women had somehow slipped past every defense. Now she would do whatever it took to protect them, even if it meant putting herself in Derek's path. The pre-dawn air was crisp as Danielle drove through the empty streets, her hands steady on the steering wheel, despite the anxiety churning in her stomach. She had left the safe house before sunrise, her letters placed carefully on the kitchen counter, where Emily and Cynthia would find them. The weight of her decision pressed heavily on her shoulders, but she knew this confrontation with Derek was inevitable. Her phone buzzed with an incoming message from her security team. Derek had been spotted entering her company's main office building. Bitter smile crossed her face. Of course he would choose her professional domain for this showdown. He was trying to hit her where it hurt most. The underground parking garage was eerily quiet when she pulled in. Her footsteps echoed off the concrete walls as she made her way to the elevator. Each step felt deliberate, measured. She had spent the night preparing for this moment, gathering every piece of evidence she had collected about Derek's illegal activities. When the elevator doors opened to the executive floor, she found Derek waiting in her office, sitting in her chair with his feet propped up on her desk. The sight of him made her blood boil, but she kept her expression neutral. "I was wondering when you'd show up," Derek said, his voice dripping with false pleasantry. "Have you been enjoying your little adventure with my family?" Danielle remained standing in the doorway, maintaining her distance. "They're not your family, Derek. They never were. You only saw them as possessions." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "And what exactly do you see them as, Danielle? Your chance at redemption? Or maybe something more personal?" His eyes glinted dangerously. "I know all about your feelings for Cynthia. Did you think I wouldn't find out?" The words hit their mark, but Danielle refused to flinch. "This isn't about my feelings. This is about protecting 2 women from a man who has terrorized them for far too long." Derek stood slowly, his facade of friendliness dropping away. "Let me make something very clear. If you don't back off, I will destroy everything you've built. Your company, your reputation. It will all come crashing down. I have friends in high places, Danielle. Friends who would be very interested in some of your company's more questionable dealings." "Are you talking about the same dealings you've been involved in?" Danielle countered, taking a step forward. "The money laundering through shell companies, the kickbacks, the fraudulent contracts." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Derek's face. Danielle pressed her advantage, moving to her desk and opening her laptop. I've spent months gathering evidence, Derek. Every illegal transaction, every threatening message, every instance of abuse. It's all documented. I have witnesses ready to testify about your behavior. Your friends in high places won't be able to help you once this goes public. You're bluffing. He snarled, but his confidence was cracking. Am I? Danielle turned the laptop screen toward him, showing him file after file of damning evidence. I've already sent copies to multiple news outlets and law enforcement agencies. They're waiting for my signal to release everything. Derek's face contorted with rage. He lunged forward, sweeping everything off her desk in a violent burst of anger. You think you can threaten me? I'll make sure everyone knows about your obsession with Cynthia, how you manipulated your way into their lives, taking advantage of their vulnerability. Danielle stood her ground, even as he advanced toward her. Go ahead. Tell everyone. I'm not ashamed of loving them, Derek. The difference between us is that my love doesn't come with conditions or threats. He grabbed her arm, his fingers digging painfully into her flesh. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Neither do you, she replied calmly, pressing a button on her phone. Immediately, her security team entered the office, along with 2 police officers. Derek's grip loosened in shock. You set me up. No, Derek. You set yourself up. Years of abuse, threats, and illegal activities. It was all going to catch up with you eventually. I just made sure it happened before you could hurt anyone else. As the officers approached with handcuffs, Derek made one last desperate attempt. I'll make sure everyone knows about your company's involvement in my operations. You'll go down with me. Danielle shook her head. My board has already been informed of everything. We've been working with authorities to expose the corruption. The company will take a hit, but we'll survive. You, on the other hand, won't be able to hurt anyone else for a very long time. She watched as they led Derek away, his threats and curses echoing down the hallway. Only when he was gone did she allow herself to sink into her chair, her hands trembling slightly as the adrenaline began to fade. The emotional toll of the confrontation hit her all at once. She had protected Emily and Cynthia, but at what cost? Her feelings for Cynthia were now out in the open, and the fallout from Derek's arrest would inevitably affect her company's reputation. Her phone buzzed with a message from Emily. Where are you? We found your letters. Please come back. Tears pricked at her eyes as she read the message. She had done what needed to be done, but the hard part wasn't over. Now she had to face Emily and Cynthia, knowing that everything was different. Her carefully constructed walls had crumbled, leaving her vulnerable in a way she hadn't been in years. The sun was fully up now, streaming through her office windows. Danielle gathered her things, knowing she needed to return to the safe house. She had promised Emily and Cynthia she would come back, and she intended to keep that promise, no matter how difficult the conversations ahead might be. As she drove back, exhaustion settled deep in her bones. The weight of her decisions, the confrontation with Derek, and the uncertain future ahead all pressed down on her. But beneath it all was a glimmer of hope. For the first time in years, she had chosen love over fear, truth over safety. Whatever came next, she would face it knowing she had done the right thing. In the quiet of the safe house's living room, Emily sat curled up on the couch, watching the evening news report of Derek's arrest. Her hands clutched a warm cup of tea, the steam rising in gentle wisps. The weight of years of fear and anxiety was slowly lifting from her shoulders, though the emotional scars still felt raw and tender. I can't believe it's really over, she whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. Danielle, who had been standing by the window, turned to face her. The legal proceedings will take time, but he won't be able to hurt either of you again. Emily nodded, setting down her cup. You know, I never thought I'd feel strong again. But watching you stand up to him, it helped me believe I could too. From the kitchen, Cynthia emerged, her eyes red-rimmed but clear. She had spent the morning crying, not from sadness, but from relief. Now she moved to sit beside Emily, taking her daughter's hand. "We both have a lot of healing to do," Cynthia said softly. She glanced at Danielle, their eyes meeting in a look heavy with unspoken words. Emily, sensing the tension between them, squeezed her mother's hand and stood up. "I think I'll go for a walk in the garden. The doctor said I should try to get more exercise now that I'm feeling stronger." Once Emily had left, Cynthia and Danielle found themselves alone, the weight of their shared past filling the space between them. Cynthia was the first to break the silence. "All those years ago," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "I was too scared to admit how I felt about you. I thought staying with Derek was safer than facing the truth." Danielle moved closer, sitting beside her on the couch. "We both made choices we regret. I should have told you how I felt instead of watching from a distance while he hurt you." Tears welled up in Cynthia's eyes as she reached for Danielle's hand. "Where do we go from here?" "I don't know," Danielle admitted, her thumb gently stroking Cynthia's palm. "But I think we owe it to ourselves to find out, when we're both ready." Through the window, they could see Emily walking in the garden, her steps growing stronger with each passing day. Like her daughter, Cynthia knew she needed time to heal, to rediscover who she was without fear shadowing her every move. "I apologize, but I notice an inconsistency. In the previous story development, there has been no mention of Emily having a son. The story so far has only included Emily, who is in her late 20s, her mother Cynthia, and Danielle. Emily has been portrayed as dealing with her own illness rather than being a mother. Would you like me to continue with a different angle that maintains consistency with the established narrative, or would you like to modify the prompt to align with the existing story elements?" The autumn sunlight streamed through the windows of Danielle's living room, casting a warm glow over the three women who sat together, their hearts heavy with unspoken words. Danielle's fingers traced nervous patterns on the arm of her chair as she looked at Cynthia, who sat across from her with eyes that held years of pain and longing. "I need to tell you something," Danielle began, her voice soft but steady. "Something I should have said years ago." She took a deep breath, gathering courage. "I've loved you, Cynthia. All this time, through everything." Emily, sitting quietly nearby, watched as her mother's eyes filled with tears. The silence stretched between them like a delicate thread, until Cynthia's trembling voice broke it. "I loved you too," Cynthia whispered, her words catching in her throat. "I was just so scared. Scared of what it meant, scared of being hurt again." Her hands shook as she wiped away a tear. "I've always wondered what might have been different if I'd been braver." Danielle moved to sit beside Cynthia, taking her hands gently. "We can't change the past," she said, "but we can choose our future. If you're willing, I'd like to try to see where this could go. Slowly, one day at a time." Emily smiled through her own tears, watching the two women she cared about most finally open their hearts to each other. Her own healing journey had taught her that love could bloom even in the most wounded places. "Maybe," Cynthia said, squeezing Danielle's hands. "It's time for both of us to be brave." The three women sat together in the warm light, their hearts lighter with shared understanding and hope. For Emily, seeing her mother find strength in love gave her own heart permission to heal. For Danielle and Cynthia, years of unspoken feelings finally had room to grow into something beautiful and real. The papers lay spread across the kitchen table, each one representing a step toward their shared future. Danielle's hand trembled slightly as she signed the final adoption document, making official what her heart had known for months. Little Tommy was now legally her son. "It's done," she whispered, looking up at Cynthia and Emily, who stood close by, their eyes shining with happy tears. Emily reached out and squeezed Danielle's shoulder. "You've been his daddy in every way that matters. Now it's just official on paper, too." Cynthia moved closer, wrapping her arm around Danielle's waist. "We're a real family now," she said softly. "All of us together." The sound of small feet padding across the floor made them turn. 4-year-old Tommy ran into the room, his dark curls bouncing with each step. "Daddy!" he called out, jumping into Danielle's waiting arms. "Hey, buddy," Danielle said, holding him close. She looked at Cynthia and Emily, seeing in their faces the same joy and peace she felt in her heart. They had all come so far from those dark days of fear and pain. "Look at us," Emily said, smiling through her tears. "Who would have thought one wrong number text could lead to all of this?" They gathered in a group hug, Tommy giggling in the middle. The morning sunlight streamed through the windows, warming their faces as they held each other close. Their past hurts hadn't disappeared, but they had transformed into something beautiful, a family bound by choice, strengthened by love, and healed by trust. Together they stood in their kitchen. No longer 3 separate stories of pain, but one united tale of hope and healing. Their future stretched before them, bright with possibility and rich with the love they'd found in each other. Thank you for being here. If something in this story stayed with you, I'd love to see you again. Subscribe. And tomorrow, I'll bring you another story crafted with heart.